Good morning. Welcome to another session on environmental impact assessment. So we shall continue with the introduction. Course outcome describing the objectives, capability and limitations of EAA, learning outcome, classification of impacts, specific outcome, definition of environmental impact and types of impacts. So in the last session we already seen the definition of impact and also some examples of some impacts, right? So we'll continue from wherever we left. So in this session we will see the classification of impacts. So there are different types of impacts, right? So environmental impact arising from any development project falls into three different categories. One is direct impacts, second one is indirect impacts, and third one is cumulative impacts. Direct impact is an impact that is immediately perceived. For example, uh, people inhale smoke from chemical industry that is released from the chemical industry. So what happens is that when they inhale it, they become unconscious and they collapse on the floor. So there is a direct impact uh, of a project, right? That's a direct impact. So indirect impacts. In case of indirect impacts, the impact doesn't happen immediately, or you don't perceive any changes in your health as soon as you come in contact with the pollutant. Uh, Maybe that may affect some other component. For example, you might have inhaled something, some pollutant, and immediately you don't find any changes in the body. Nothing happens. You are quite all right. But maybe in the due course of time, you may get some diseases, right, which may not come immediately. So there is an indirect impact, uh, right? So we don't perceive the changes immediately. It happens indirectly. It's not a direct impact. The cumulative impact is uh, an impact that is that goes on building up, right? The impact goes on building up, and an example of this I already discussed in the earlier sessions is the Bhopal gas tragedy, where people inhaled the methyl isocyanate, right? So this gas was released in the middle of the night due to the malfunctioning of the plant, or maybe some accidents in the plant due to which it was released into the environment, and people inhaled all those gases, and they had a direct impact, or to say primary impact, which took place, and they collapsed, and they some of them vomited like anything, and then finally died. But the cumulative impact is some of those people who recovered from those diseases, right? Uh, Although they recovered from the diseases, the impact was cumulative one in the sense like the offsprings or children that were born to those people had defects in them, and some of them were handicapped, some of them were deaf, some of them were blind, and some of them had some maybe some cancer causing problems in their body. So this is something like an impact which does not happen immediately, or it is not even secondary, but the impact goes on building up, building up, building up in such a way that the future generation also gets affected. So this is an example of cumulative impact. So these three groups can be further broken down according to their nature. It can be positive or negative, right? So positive impact is something like which gives a benefit to the people. For example, employability. For example, the aesthetics of the area is enhanced, right? That is all positive impact. Negative impact is we have seen a lot of negative impacts: degradation of the air, degradation of the water, degradation of the land. Then random and predictable. Random and predictable. Predictable impact is something which you can predict before it occurs. A random impact is something which we cannot predict, right? For example, a chemical industry is constructed, and we may know some impacts it can cause to the environment, but it may lead to some new diseases which we may not know, right? Similarly, what happens is that some effluents are discharged into the water, right? We can predict that the aquatic species will die, or they will develop some diseases, and the water will not be drinkable. It cannot be used for any uh, useful purpose. But It may lead to some new kind of diseases that we may not be able to predict now. So that is a random impact. Local and widespread. Local impact is that happens in that particular locality, and widespread impact is the spreading of the impacts to neighboring cities, neighboring districts, maybe the whole state is getting affected, right, and so on. Short-term and long-term impacts. Short-term impact is the impact is perceived only for a short duration, maybe a few days, maybe a few weeks. That's all. Long-term impacts, the impacts which generally stay for many months, many years, right? For example, deforestation, right? So what happens is that all the trees are cut down, and it takes many years for trees to grow. And when you're part of a forest like that, it may take even some thousands of years again to bring back the same aesthetic feature of that particular locality, or even to bring the bring back the ecosystem again into that particular locality. It may take a lot of time. Why? Because when you cut off all the trees, all the living beings that were staying there, they are all lost. They are going to anyway go out of that particular place because they have no place to stay. Their habitat is spoiled. So that is a long-term impact. So an interdisciplinary approach helps in assessing the environmental impact. Why? Because so many parameters are involved, and you are not looking at only a particular parameter. You'll have to see everything in toto, right? The analysis considers potential consequences, which may be long term or short term, or it may be direct or indirect, right? Uh, Indirect is also sometimes called as secondary impacts. It may be an individual impact, or it may be cumulative impact. It may be a positive impact, or it may be a adverse impact. Right. So environmental issues are interdisciplinary. They are probabilistic. They are interactive, and they are biological. Right. So it is not seeing only a particular impact from a particular perspective. We'll have to see everything in a comprehensive way. That is what they are meaning by the statement. So we will stop this session here, and we'll continue this example of this typical road development project in the next session. Thank you. Thus, we come to the end of this session. Thank you for your participation. Looking forward to meeting you in the next session.